and on the pedestal these words appear: My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing besides remains round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare.
Welcome to Analyzing Finance with Nick. In this video, we're going to do the second part of the Old Money series, where I answer the question, how old is the oldest money? What family today traces its lineage back to ancient times? And by my definition of ancient times, I'm referring to pre-500 AD, which is shortly after the Western Roman Empire fell in 476 AD. So I'm talking about ancient cultures in places such as China, India, Mesopotamia, ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, and ancient Rome, and ancient Mesoamerica. And if you look back at it, there is really not very many people left who have a valid claim of descent from antiquity. And in genealogy circles, descent from antiquity means that you have proven family members that are from before 500 AD in one of the ancient civilizations I've mentioned. And there's several reasons why we don't see very many families, if any, from this period. The first one is just due to the lack of last names. Last names, as we know them today, didn't really become a thing until the 14th century. The modern-day United Kingdom and medieval England were the first places to start adopting modern last names for the nobility in the 11th century. But really before that, people really only had one name, or they would make their surname just son of whoever their father or mother was, and or just have their last name based on a place or an affiliation to a particular king. And these would constantly change by the generation, so the last name is not consistent from generation to generation. That's why when you do ever hire a genealogist, your heritage, if you have any sort of English descent, will always go the furthest back on that side, because they were really the first country to have current records that date back that far with surnames. Other reasons why we don't see very many old money families from back then, because ancient nobility was often targets for rival clans or for rival kings and emperors who would basically take out one set of nobility in a region and replace them with their own. It was very common for children and grandchildren and even distant cousins of previous kings and emperors to get routinely slaughtered when there was a new regime in town, because the existence alone of a potential heir was enough to challenge the legitimacy of the new invading ruler and could provide a source of unity or a leader to unify opposition behind. So it was very politically dangerous to keep rival nobility alive. And because of that, many of these families didn't last very long, especially as all these mentioned civilizations or their incarnation of them back in those periods all fell to either barbarian invasion or another empire taking them over. So with that out of the way, what are some of the most ancient records that we do have that imply some sort of continuous line of family being recorded? Well, the oldest one that I could find that lasted quite a bit of time was the ancient Egyptian crown. Basically the Middle and the New Kingdom. Egyptian records date back to the king Teti Sheri, Queen Teti Sheri, 1545 BC. And they go all the way from 1545 BC to the 500 AD, so it's just shortly after Cyrus the Great took over in Persia, 570 AD. So that was a 1,000-year run The last leader was Neteiti, born in 570 BC, dying in 529. So from 1535 BC to 529 BC is over 1,000 years. And even though the Egyptian royal line is not around to this day, the fact that they were able to keep a 1,000-year continuous record of the Egyptian royal family and their descendants for that long, especially in that time when paper was made of very fragile materials such as papyrus, and the constant risk of turnover or natural disasters or fires burning down ancient records, it's quite an accomplishment to have that survive. So that's like the longest record of a continuing family within that era. But are there any that are still continuing to this day? Based on the ancient records, there really are no remaining descendants of nobility or rulers or the wealthy in society such as ancient Egypt, Greece, Mesopotamia, Persia, or India. When it comes to ancient Rome, the last proven descendant of one of the patrician Roman families was Pope Gregory I, who was born in 540 and died in 604. So it's really only about 130 years after the fall of the Western Roman Empire that the last of the patrician and noble families of Rome were effectively extinct from the historical record. It didn't take too long. There is one modern family who does claim to have Roman descent, but they're not really able to completely verify it. It's more of a legend within the family than any sort of definitive proof. However, the legend of the Massimos, which is a Roman-based aristocratic family from modern-day Rome, Italy, and when it was part of the Papal States as well, claim to have ancestry that dates back to several Catholic saints, such as Pope Anastasius I from 399 to 401, or Pope Pascal I from 817 to 824, and even further back to as early as the Roman Republic, where they claim to be a descendant from the gens Fabia, or also known as the Maximi family in Republican Rome, whose one of the more famous members is Quintus Fabius Maxus Verrucus, who was from 275 BC to 203 BC, and he was a consul 5 times during ancient Rome. So the problem is that this claim is that there's not really much evidence. Like the really oldest evidence of the Massimo family only dates to about 950 AD, which is still pretty old, but it's not as old as our definition of what truly is an ancient family. And there's plenty of medieval families that go back to the 8th and 9th centuries AD. So, is there anybody left? Surprisingly, there's one family line that is still around and has proven records of it. And that is the family tree of the great Chinese philosopher Confucius. It's actually kind of interesting because of a lot of these axial age philosophical and religious leaders, Confucius is really the only one known to have children of his own. Jesus Christ did not have children of his own. Neither did the Buddha. And so a lot of the great Greek philosophers were also known for being childless as well, such as Aristotle. However, Confucius did have a family, and Confucius's family keeps going all the way to this day. There are 80 generations of descendants of Confucius, with the most current one is in the family being Kun Yu Zhen, who was born in 2006. So Confucius's 80 greats grandson is currently a high school student in Taiwan. His father, Sui Shang-kun, is a Taiwanese politician and advisor to the government. and the current patriarch of the family. And his preceding grandfather was also a political advisor and politician in Taiwan. And that's just the main line of Confucius descendants. Confucius descendants have split off the family tree, but are not part of the main line, so distant cousins of the current main line, who still have ancestry from Confucius, are leading politicians in the Chinese Communist Party in mainland China. So basically both sides of the Taiwanese strait and all of the major governments that run the Sino world are descendants of Confucius in some shape or form. Not all of them, but they're descendants of Confucius who are involved in both governments, which I find fascinating. So that is the answer for who is the oldest of oldest money. And it is the descendants of Confucius, which was a surprising answer when I discovered it. So what are your thoughts? Do you know of any other descendants of ancient families who have evidence to prove it? Were there some people from the other ancient civilizations apart from China whose family records have made it past the sands of time? Let me know, and feel free to comment on your thoughts on this video. Thank you.